Well, thank you for joining me. I'm so thrilled to talk to you today. And the subject is your piano piece, or actually larger project, really. It's more than a piano piece. I only bite because you make me. Tell us a little bit about how you came to this project.
Well, I was asked by the Theatre Royal Concert Hall in Nottingham to put together a programme of music for small screen, as in music for computer games. So I'd performed a solo recital there the year before with a piece I'd commissioned from a composer called Cheryl Frances Hode for piano and Commodore 64, an 80s home computer, which she'd written the notes for and I'd programmed in, and we played alongside. And they'd enjoyed that, and so they said, will you come back and do this music for small screen program, because the Halle were playing an orchestral program that evening of music for big screen, so they thought it would make quite a nice pre-concert concert. So I put together this program of some video game music arrangements I planned to make, which I did. I also shared the program with another instrumentalist and kind of composer, chiptune composer, called Blake Troyes, who played some, I think it was Sonic game music out of his Game Boy. And I basically put forward this piece of a game of Snake that was performed along to. So they would be synchronized, the music and the visuals would be synchronized, and you'd sort of see the cause and effect of the visuals. You'd hear it in sound. So I had this idea, and there is a composer called Benjamin Oliver, who I work with a lot as a pianist, and he loves doing these synchronized kind of pieces. So he seemed like a perfect option or perfect choice to write this piece. But by the time everything all came around, there was no time and no funding. So I just had to write the piece myself. And yeah, so it's the first sort of grown-up piece I wrote, in terms of I used to compose as a teenager, but essentially this piece came out of me having backed myself into a corner, having declared a program, and then having to deliver it.
So it was your idea, sort of as music director, not necessarily as the composer of this project. Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you explain to us a little bit of the process of putting the piece together?
It was really hard. Obviously, knowing the story of how it came about, the fact that the underlying feeling was is, possibly quite understandable. So what I did was I found this GIF, actually, of Snake being completed very quickly on the Creative Commons, essentially, and I slowed it down. So I went from there. I just sort of chose a speed. I confess part of that was knowing how long the piece had to be. So I took that length and that speed, and from there I put that into the music program Logic. Okay. And I plotted in, just in a really dry way, where all the bytes came. So I just scrolled through the video and I put just a MIDI actually sound on where all of those were. I then put those into Sibelius, the notation program, at which point it was obviously a mess of demi-semiquavers and ties everywhere. And I humanized it. I thought about what, at that sort of speed, I could reasonably expect, what I could expect of myself. And whether having a chord come on the last demi-semiquaver of the bar, whether I'd be able to do that accurately enough for that to be worth it. Or so I mostly just, I think I went down to semiquavers. Okay. And tidied it up a bit.
So when we're following it, it looks like it lines up, but it's maybe just slightly off because like what you're saying is you're humanizing it. You're making it fit for the normal perception of what the beat is.
Yes, and for what any human being behind a piano can do.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't have bet money at that speed that I could put that demi-semiquaver in the right place. And actually, it landing somewhere slightly squarer, I was more confident that I could actually get that exactly right. So there was a lot of backwardsing and forwardsing of these MIDI sounds and seeing if my brain would suddenly go, that one's wrong. That has to go sort of the other side of that margin of error. So I put all of those in.
And so then you're constantly listening back and forth as to whether it works with the video game.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So there was a lot of cross-eyedness. And then I started to put notes to it, and I just went for a scale going down. It wasn't particularly, it wasn't consciously a string like a snake is. That wasn't a picture in my mind at that time, but that was essentially all the material I needed to write the whole piece. It's almost all from stepwise things or relationship to the tonic, I think, between that and motor rhythms. So I went, and then I just kept checking back on the screen for where, so I work a lot with dancers, and where I thought something movement-wise needed painting. So occasionally where a certain beat lines up with the snake sort of hitting a wall or something like that, I would watch it and I would think, oh, something needs to happen there. And I just started plotting in more and more that way. And basically the further on the piece got, the more I had to take into account that kind of thing and be more and more creative, because I found quite quickly that essentially I felt like the structure of the piece visually is quite flawed, because actually the distance between all the bytes gets further and further apart. And just watching a snake sort of do this, when you know it's going to end up here eventually, keeping that tension was quite hard. So that involved a lot of watching and a lot of gut instinct of, oh, I feel like that's a raising of stakes somehow, where it seems to be about to take a wrong turn or something like that. So yes, the further away the bytes got, the more I had to look at the movement of the snake.